Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I am going to be doing my weekly update for the last week up until this point. So I've decided I'm probably going to normally film these on Saturdays. So basically like Sunday to Monday is kind of the ground that these will cover to just talk about what I've read for this week. So first off, I am just about done with the audio for The Shadow Rising. I just before this put a bookmark in. I have like 62 pages left is all, so less than 3 hours of audio. Which the fact that 62 pages is still nearly 3 hours is still crazy to me, which is why it's audiobooks have taken some getting used to. But the fact that we're 2 weeks, as of filming this, 2 weeks into the month, and I'm almost done with the Wheel of Time book. That's way faster than I've ever finished any audiobook before. So I should have it done here very, very soon, and then I can jump into the next thing I'm going to be doing on audio this month, which we'll talk about in a minute here. So then for the physical read I've been reading, I have been working on Jade War by Fonda Lee. I got this from my library. I read the first one. And instead of trying to find a matching copy, I realized that my library has the whole series. So I'm like, awesome, cool. So check this out. I'm not crazy far into this. I am just, looks like 200 pages in. So I still have a bit to go because this has, I guess it's just under 600 actually. So I'm a third of the way through. That's better than it looks. It didn't look like a third necessarily, but it is about a third. And so I'm liking this so far. Jade City I thought was pretty good. I wasn't like huge on it. And so far I don't feel like I'm like huge on this book either. I will say so far Jade War is feeling a lot more like gangster movie-y, which is kind of what I expected from Jade City. And it focused on a lot of other things and it's still building. I think and I'll probably, once I finish this as well and talk more, assuming I read the third book and all that, I think this is one of those series that is talked about in a way that it makes you think it's just going to be like, oh, it's gang wars, violence, and it's really not that. We are looking at Kikon and Janloon, the Jade City, and there is a Jade War, but it's a lot more looking at like the geopolitical spectrum and looking at the effect of all kinds of different things, international relations. Like there's a lot more to it. This does have some more like the kind of like gangstery stuff, so it still definitely has that. But I'm starting to realize that the way these books are often described may not be the best way to describe them, but I am enjoying so far. I did on Kindle, I finished Voice of War. I will have a review for Voice of War coming out very soon. I quite liked it. I thought it was really good. It was really just mostly kind of setting up, I think, the big story. But what I think Zach Argyle did well is he made it a very, very like personal, character-centric story. So even though it's kind of really only getting the big like overarching story set up, because it was still like a personal story, it was still good. We still, learn a lot more about the world and see it going on. I did have some complaints here as well, but overall I quite enjoyed that one. So watch out for the review. That'll probably be coming Friday after this. Once I finished that, I started on, actually I started like really late one night when I couldn't sleep, but I started on the Kindle with Wall of Storms, which is the sequel to Grace of Kings. That book is a behemoth of a book. It's like 1,000 pages physical. And so at this point, I'm only like, I think 11% in. So I still have quite a bit to go. I should have woken up the Kindle to actually check the percentage before I started filming, but that would be too responsible. But 11%, yeah, I'm 11% in. And I actually left it in the middle of a chapter because I complained about it with Grace of Kings. And this has seemed pretty good so far, too. With Grace of Kings, where you all of a sudden we're going to stop the story and we're going to do like a really in-depth backstory on a character. And I got to one of those chapters. I'm like, okay, here's a backstory chapter. Then the next chapter comes like, oh, no, we're still doing backstory. But the chapter I'm in the middle of, the entire like full-length chapter, it's not a short chapter, full-length chapter is... in the past, a character's mother telling them a really, really long-winded story, and I kept reading and reading. I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed because I was reading it late. I usually read my physical book during the day. I do the audio like when I'm doing something I can't physically read, and then at night I read the Kindle. So I ended up stopping the little chapter. But as soon as I finish with the Shadow Rising on audio, I will be jumping into Wall of Storms also on audio. So I'll be doing audio and on the Kindle, which should help me get through that fairly quickly because I do plan on participating in a live show that's at the end of May. So that's one of the few things that like I have kind of a timeline on that I specifically need to get to. Of course, there's Fool's Quest as well, which I'll read at some point, which that's more of the informal buddy read at this point. And then I have all the review copies I showed you last week that I'm still planning on getting into as well. Although those are probably going to be a little bit later in the month as I start to get to those. So if you saw the video that I put out on the last Friday where I read the first chapter of classic sci-fi fantasy books, mostly fantasy, I ended up, and I barely read anymore, but I ended up grabbing Dragon's Bane by Barbara Hambly. The first chapter was just a lot of fun. I really, really liked it, and it's such a short book. It's just barely over 300 pages, mass market, and like, you know, the text is small mass market text, but this really shouldn't take me that long to read. The only thing is I already have the physical Kindle and audiobook, different things going on, so I've like barely touched this, but I just sat like I read for a few minutes because I was enjoying it, so I'll probably jump and get this in there. I still plan on reading Black Sun Rising here really soon, hopefully this month or early next, depending on when I get to it, but I'm excited for it. But this one was just short and fun, and I felt like just trying something different. That's what I've been trying to let myself do, that, just like mood read more, because that's kind of what I'm doing. I've not really planned out when I picked up most of the books. I had a general idea of certain books that I wanted to read this month in general, but as far as order and grabbing different stuff, I've been playing it pretty fast and loose, which has really, really been nice. But so those are the things that I read. So for this next week, hopefully I'll finish up Jade War and Dragon's Bane and make a nice chunk into Wall of Storms as well. And then who knows what else I will pick up next week in the meantime as well. We'll have to see and find out together in the next weekly update, but that is it for this one. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. As always, check the link in the description for the Wizardly Do It Discord if you want to chat books, whether these books, other books, or really anything at all. It is a lot of fun and we would love to have you. Of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.